It's going to pay rents in Paris.
Yes, exactly.
It's going to support somebody's fancy dinner to
100%.
entertain whoever.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, to be clear, in shutting down, which we're in the process of doing, shutting down USAID, the reason for that, as opposed to simply trying to do some minor house cleaning, is that as we dug into USAID, it became apparent that what we have here is not an apple with a worm in it, but we have actually just a bowl of worms. And so at the point at which you don't merely, if you've got an apple and it's got a worm in it, maybe you can take the worm out. But if you've got actually just a bowl of worms, it's hopeless.
Hello, America. Welcome back. Today is the Super Bowl. So many things happening that have never happened before. But before I go any further, I want you to hear a recording not many people have heard and not many people have. This is Doge discussing all the money that has been inappropriately used from USAID and other agencies and what's fixing to happen next in America.
He believes everything that all four of us have just said,
Exactly.
which is a beautiful thing. And without that, it wouldn't be possible.
The more I've gotten to know President Trump, the more I like him. Frankly, I love the guy. He's great.
Yeah. And he's full bore more than any president we've had since the creation of the administrative state. So I think that's number one. And number two is, thanks to him, actually, in his first term, you got a Supreme Court that 6-3 vehemently agrees with everything we've just said.
Yes.
And so I think it's possible.
Yes.
Now.
In fact,
it's actually possible.
Yes. In fact, if it's not possible now, it'll never be possible. This is our shot. This is the best hand of cards we're ever going to have. Mm-hmm. And if we don't take advantage of this best hand of cards, it's never going to happen. So we're going to do it.
I agree.
Now or never.
Yeah, now or never. And I do think you're right, Vivek. With the first administration of President Trump and lessons learned through that administration, and now in the second administration, the stage is set. And he knows how to aggressively tackle a lot of these issues that have plagued us for years. And folks ask me, oh, Trump's first 100 days, what is that going to be like? And I'm like, forget the 100 days, folks. It's going to happen a lot faster than that. And he needs to continue to be aggressive. And we all know there's going to be bumps along the way. Of course there are, because we're moving at the speed of relevance here. But we've got to get in there and make an impact so that our constituents can actually see the benefit, because we've got a tough mid-cycle or mid-presidential year election coming up in 2026. And we cannot lose the House or the Senate, because then the president will be dead in the water.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
We just need to move out. Move out.
Yeah, I think that's really, the people will judge the performance and whether actually we got things done and whether things are better off and in 2 years. And I think if the people feel like, yeah, they're better off, the country's working better, they feel there's the reward for hard work is there, that their paycheck's going further than it used to, that their standard of living is better, their mortgage is lower, the credit card bills are lower, the prices at the stores are the same, they haven't risen dramatically, then I think there's no problem. We will win the next election. The people will reward that. So I think that's what needs to happen. But I think if it does happen, there will be a Republican win in the midterms, and which is unusual. But I think if we make these goals happen, I think we'll actually have an increased majority in the House and Senate, and be able to continue to, as the president would say, make America great.
So why am I sharing that with you today of all days? Super Bowl day, right? Super Bowl Sunday. I'm showing you that because it is reported that Elon Musk spent $40 million of his own money to make sure that 180 million Americans that may not be on social media get the truth today. Now, there are mixed feelings coming across all throughout the United States right now. Some people are like, we don't need your commercials. Just give us the receipt. We'll figure it out ourselves. Other people are like, oh, this is basically mis and disinformation from Elon Musk. I got this information from Substack. Basically, democracy and the disinformation, right? I love it. They're going to come up with so much nonsense to keep people from knowing the truth. So whether or not you watched the Super Bowl today, be aware that there are supposed to be at least 4 30-second ads throughout the Super Bowl from Elon Musk himself. Now, you may ask, why is Elon paying for these ads and not the government? Well, because then it would be illegal. Because this is information going out about federal tax dollars that the Democrats don't want you to know, my friend. So whether or not you're going to watch the Super Bowl today, do come back and check with me in a couple of days and I'll show you the commercials. Because, like I said, it is only a rumor at this point. We have to get the Super Bowl started, completed, to see if it actually happens. However, President Trump will be the first elected sitting president to ever attend a Super Bowl. So God bless you. Enjoy these next couple of Doge clips that you're not going to hear anywhere else, for Elon and Vivek and a couple other people discussing the waste, the fraud, and the ridiculous of what has happened to the United States. Love you guys. Like, comment, and subscribe.
It's the best disinfectant out there.
And they hate sunshine. That tells you something.
Yes, we need to be able to exercise our oversight. And this is where we have been blocked so long in Congress. You can go onto my official website on the internet.
Yep.
You can look through my priorities, go to my squeal area. You can go back. I've got the last several years on there of efforts, whether it's USAID, NIH, the National Institutes of Health, those taxpayer dollars that were going to China's Wuhan Institute of Virology, SNAP overpayments through USDA and the states, you name it. Just even my back to work report, the out of the office that we've talked so much about.
Yeah.
And on day one, the president came in and said, hey, everybody back to work.
Yeah.
I don't think most Americans understand that only 6% of our federal workforce shows up to work in the office every single day. Only 6%.
Yes,
and
absolutely. It's truly insane. In fact, and one of the most insane things I've seen was that I was speaking with the hopefully our soon to be Attorney General Pam Bondi, and she was telling me that the U.S. engraving is actually, I guess, which used to be the U.S. Mint, which is actually a building that is an historic building. Actually, a beautiful building it's here in D.C. and the windows are all broken and has turned into a homeless encampment. That means like this. No one comes to work to such a degree that this beautiful building has all the windows broken and is turned into a homeless encampment in downtown D.C. That's how absurd it is. It's beyond belief.
Yeah, and that's why so many of these buildings, if we could repopulate them, that would be great. And that way we can have oversight and make sure employees are doing what they're supposed to do. I'm going to hammer on USAID one more time.
Absolutely.
So we talk about the locality pay abuse, and that's what happens when people aren't working in the office. What they're doing in DC, and not everyone, I don't want to accuse every federal worker of being a bad actor, but I have seen so many examples of this. We had a USAID employee that was falsely using an office supply retailer's mailing address, think like Staples and places like that, using that address in Virginia to defraud the taxpayers by claiming higher Washington, D.C. locality pay, but they were actually living in another state full time. And they had the full knowledge and assistance of their supervisor in pulling off this scam. And then the IG, the USAID IG, blew off my request for an investigation.
What did they give? That seems how can they do that?
They can.
How can they do this?
This is the problem we have, is that there are checks and balances in place where we can write letters all day and we can request IG oversight. But if that IG says, I'm not going to investigate, I'm not interested, I, as a United States Senator, don't have the power to force them to do it. And this is why I'm so excited that we have Doge and that we have a president that's willing to back us up. Why are we spending taxpayer dollars on them? And it goes to the point of we've sent millions of dollars to China to study what? COVID. We saw how that ended.
In fact, it's pretty outrageous that the COVID, the virus, was developed in what is like a lab in Wuhan, and yet it was funded by U.S. tax dollars, which was simply routed through this fake nonprofit EcoHealth, because the government, the U.S. government can't give directly to China, so they just gave to EcoHealth, knowing that it would go to China. So our U.S. tax dollars were used effectively to, in the end, kill Americans, which is insane.
Absolutely insane. And I know, Elon, you have been on USAID. You have really, and
that's the one that's missed for sure.
This was another one of my efforts. And this began years ago when we were trying to figure out what they were doing with our American taxpayer dollars that were going to support humanitarian efforts in Ukraine. So I wanted to know exactly how those dollars were being spent. And not just
a reasonable request.
Yes. Oh my gosh. And I shared this with you earlier, Elon, just privately, but we got all kinds of threats from USAID because I was trying to exercise my oversight capacity in Congress. So
that's just shocking. It's how honestly, it's outrageous that a taxpayer-funded organization would threaten a U.S. senator who is simply trying to figure out if American taxpayer money is being spent correctly and not fraudulently.
Yes. And so what my staff and I had estimated was that 30 to 40% of the USAID's awards would go to indirect costs. So their overhead, their rent, employees, things like that.
What are they living in, the Taj Mahal?
Hey, but Vivek, okay, after months and months of obstruction where UN wouldn't let us in, they told us the NICRA, the negotiated indirect cost rate agreements, it's a lot of government jargon, but anyway, the indirect cost, they said that the database, it doesn't exist. That was a lie. That was a lie. It was false because we found it. And then we were told we weren't allowed to access the database. And then that's when Congressman McCall and I came together and we launched an official congressional investigation so that we could gain access to the rates.
Wow.
And then after about 6 more months of negotiations, then my staff was finally allowed to access very limited data. They were allowed to go into a room and they couldn't take notes. They were on camera the whole time. They couldn't remove any of the information. But what my staff found is, you were laughing at that 30 to 40% because that is outrageous. That was understated.
What?
In some of the cases, the NICRA rates were upwards towards anywhere from 50 to 60%. And that doesn't include the cost for subcontractors, what the subcontractors were adding on. So this is the problem with USAID. And that's why, Elon, I'm with you on this, because so much of that taxpayer money is not even going to, we love to feel good about helping starving children in name your country, but it's not going there. It's going to pay rents in Paris.
Yes, exactly.
It's going to support somebody's fancy dinner to 100%. Entertain whoever.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, to be clear, in shutting down, which we're in the process of doing, shutting down USAID, the reason for that, as opposed to simply trying to do some minor house cleaning, is that as we dug into USAID, it became apparent that what we have here is not an apple with a worm in it, but we have actually just a ball of worms. And so at the point at which you don't merely, if you've got an apple and it's got a worm in it, maybe you can take the worm out. But if you've got actually just a ball of worms, it's hopeless. And USAID is a ball of worms. There is no apple. And when there is no apple, you've just got to basically get rid of the whole thing. That is why it's got to go. It's beyond repair. So, Yeah.
Well,
There's a solution to this, which is that let's say something's cut that the people of this country just demand needs to exist again. It can always be voted back into existence by Senator Ernst and her colleagues. And
Totally.
the fact that isn't going to happen reveals exactly why many of these agencies really deletion is the only answer that's left.